I don't know. Like, did you want to end on a loss? Because the Steelers weren't going to go win the Super Bowl. And I get
No.
that the playoffs, if you had to pick, your choice is always the playoffs. But
Yeah.
doesn't it feel like it's like, okay, like, they ended on as high of a note as it could possibly get, I feel.
Yeah. No, I think so too. I think that's a good point to make too. Like, you don't want to end on a loss. Your draft position is slightly better. There's a number of benefits to it. It was just really weird to watch this team like put a bow on a pretty good win, on a pretty convincing win, and still like the only thing anyone was talking about in the final minute or so, they kept panning on the broadcast. They kept panning to fans leaving the stadium as soon as they saw that the Dolphins had kicked that last field goal.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just it was a real somber moment at a time when, like, I don't know, everyone should have been celebrating a win. It felt like a weird way for the team to leave the field at Acrisure Stadium and for the fans to kind of leave them too. But I agree. There's a much more positive way of looking at this season that I think I have than I don't know. It was like that last scene. I think those final scenes you saw from Acrisure Stadium weren't really representative of how positive this season was.
Yeah, 100%. That's crazy to think about because I couldn't tell that was happening. I was obviously focused on the Steelers and the players. And you went into the locker room, and I even asked. I was like, I asked guys in the elevator as we were going down, like, what do you think the attitude of this locker room is about to be? What do you think the, kind of like the atmosphere is? And a lot of them were like, it's gonna be a lot of guys that are pissed off that they missed the playoffs. And I was like, I don't really know if that's going to be the case. Like, I kind of feel like maybe that won't happen, and guys will be a little bit more upbeat. And they were like, Najee Harris could not stop talking about how good the season was. Demonte KZ was like, I could celebrate a win. I mean, I have the clip. I don't have it clipped off, but I should have, because he was like, hell yeah, I could celebrate. Like, we just won. And a lot of guys felt the same way. Like, it wasn't a, man, this stinks, the season's over, we should have been in the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. It was just a bunch of guys that were like, we were 2-6 8 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. And we are sitting here at 9-8. We gave our head coach his 16th consecutive winning season. We finished on a high note. We got a lot to build off of that we didn't think we had to build off of. And we gave ourselves an opportunity. I think that was the biggest thing is, you heard Kenny talk and say, we wish that we had one of those games back. Yeah, you do wish that you had one of those games back, but those games happened before the turnaround happened. And that turnaround was really what mattered. The Steelers had to get to a point where you felt really positive about the future. They did. Unfortunately, it came after the 3 teams that they had to overcome to get into the postseason. But they still found a way where it was like, if Joe Flacco doesn't start that game for the Jets, if Mike White is healthy, if there's no horse collar call, the Steelers are in the playoffs. Like they got as close as humanly possible. And I think that's a W. That's a W. Do you think that the season is a win? Do you look at the grand scheme of things as a season and say this was a W for the Steelers?
Yeah, I think so. I think you found a lot of pieces that you can use for the future. You found a franchise quarterback, number 1 receiver. Your top running back has survived a really slow start to have a really great second half of the year and a great season overall. He passed 1,000 yards for the second straight season. Jalen Warren's a piece. Pat Freiermuth broke out again and kind of put it together for a full season. There are young pieces on the defense that you can start to count on. You put a young team in position to play some meaningful games, and I don't think that can be understated either. Yeah, they didn't make the playoffs, but they played kind of de facto playoff games down the stretch. Those games in Baltimore and then this one in the season finale in particular, like those were kind of win your seasons over types of games, and to kind of put your young team through the ringer like that, and to give them that experience, that's going to be really valuable. As you like move down this road and you start to see what kind of team you have in the future.
You said franchise quarterback. Did Kenny Pickett prove that he's a franchise quarterback this season in your eyes?
Well, I don't know if he proved that, but I don't know. You draft a guy first overall and you start him in his first year, he's your franchise quarterback, whether you like it or not. At least for the next couple of years, like,
yeah.
And I'm that's Also, not to say I wasn't impressed by what Kenny did this year. I thought he had a good season. I thought he got a lot better. Like there's some there that like there's some stuff to build on there, and I'm perfectly comfortable calling Kenny your franchise quarterback for both the reason that he's, he was your first round pick at quarterback, so he kind of has to be, but also I think he showed plenty this year that makes you confident moving forward that he can be your guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you did enough. Like with Kenny Pickett, he showed the progression to, it's like, okay, we were worried. Everybody was worried. What's the ceiling for Kenny Pickett? That was the big question all offseason, right? Is what's the ceiling for Kenny Pickett? Because he might be the most pro ready, but he's got the smallest ceiling or the shortest ceiling. Well, I think he's surpassed what that ceiling is already. I think he's shown like, yeah, like maybe my physical attributes aren't always there. He threw a lot of bad passes against the Browns, but I could win. I could go win games. I could keep teams close. I can motivate an offense. I could lead. I could be a veteran even as a rookie. And that's all you're looking for in Kenny Pickett, is a guy to go in there and be like, hey, look at, these are the building blocks that I have. Let's build the rest of it together. Those are some pretty strong building blocks. So I agree. I think that he is the franchise quarterback for now. I do operate off of a weird thought, though, that, and I don't know how weird it is, I guess, but a lot of people bring up, oh, well, you can't have the fourth best quarterback in your division. That doesn't lead to wins. And right now, Joe Burrow is the best, Lamar Jackson second, Deshaun Watson's third. I think that, leave it. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, Deshaun didn't play like the third best quarterback in the division this year.
That's what I'm trying to, like, I think
I know
that
he had
year.
I know it's a limited sample size, and like theoretically he should get better with the full off season and practice, but like,
theoretically Kenny Pickett should too, though.
Right.
That's what I mean. I agree with you. Like, and that's where I was going, is I think that you give it another year and Kenny might be the third best quarterback in the division and possibly pushing for the second. I mean, Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson. That's very hard to overcome, but we don't know what Lamar Jackson's future is going to be in Baltimore. The dude hasn't stayed healthy in 2 seasons. That's concerning. You don't know what next year holds for Lamar Jackson. He's definitely more of a question mark than I think anybody else. Deshaun Watson's more of like an iffy, maybe it's not going to work out type of thing. But I think Kenny Pickett in a year's time can be very close to finishing the season as the number 2 quarterback in the AFC North. And that's enough. Like, you're not going to beat Joe Burrow. So if you could get close enough to it, you got to feel pretty good about that situation.
Yeah, and it's also pretty clear that like this team's built around its defense. Like, like how, where in the division do you think the Steelers defense ranks? Like, it's at least it's second if it's not first. Right?
I would say
like,
it's like right on that line. Them and Baltimore, obviously, a healthy Baltimore defense is very hard to play against. Like, very hard. They're not healthy all the time. I think that's the biggest thing. But when they are all clicking, that's a dangerous group. But that being said, I mean, the Steelers defense, you would assume, is going to get better too. They played all season with pretty much nobody at linebacker, a bunch of guys that everybody said all season is not a starting cornerback set at cornerback, and a bunch of plug and play guys on the defensive line with very little defensive line depth. You had a year. I mean, I think that, you're going to fill at least 2 of those holes, and maybe you are the best defense. On top of that, I don't care what anybody says, Najee Harris is the second best running back in the AFC North when healthy. He's no Nick Chubb. Nobody's Nick Chubb. But he's number 2. And like the Browns, like as long as it's not in Cincinnati, you got to feel good about that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, like this team is definitely much closer to competing than I think we ever thought they were. I don't know. The Steelers were always exactly what we thought they were. I feel like really young, got beat up by a tough schedule in the first half and rallied to make it a worthwhile season in the second half. Like, I don't think it's much deeper than they were a young team that grew and got better and also got the benefit of an easier schedule in the second half. And there's so many more, like when you watch this team on a week-to-week basis, I think it was easy to say, oh, this team really has no shot of competing, in kind of the grander scheme of things and kind of competing for championships. But you got to work with what you've got, and what they've got is a really young team that is going to come along and got better as the year went along, and there's a lot to be optimistic about, and they have a lot to work with to make this team better.
Oh yeah.
I think it's another like hopeful reason to look towards the future, I guess.
Yeah, building blocks are there for certain. As you look at them right now, are your expectations 365 days removed from the end of next season? Are your expectations that they'll be in the postseason next year?
Yeah, I think you come this close, and you come this close as the kind of team that you are with the makeup that this roster had, and
yeah,
it should be expected, honestly. I don't know, like simply put, like if your expectations aren't playoffs next year, I don't know what that like. You should
exactly.
count on a big jump year to year. Like I don't know, like after coming that close, like literally we're talking about one game in between where they are right now and the playoffs and going to play Buffalo, or even taking a leap up to a different seed and maybe avoiding them. Like you don't want to go crazy and talk about what they might do if they make the playoffs, but
yeah,
I can't think of any reason why you shouldn't expect this team to not just compete for a playoff spot, but actually make one next year.
Yeah, 100%. You got to think that if Mitch Trubisky throws one less interception against Baltimore, they're in the postseason. If Kenny Pickett starts against the New York Jets, you have to imagine they have a better opportunity to win that game. There's so many ifs. If Kenny Pickett starts against the Jets and has an actual start before he has to go to Miami and play in primetime and try to win that game, maybe he wins that game. There's just so many what ifs with the Steelers. Yeah, I agree. Next year, your expectations have to be there.